My mother didn't raise her voice when she said it. Duver. She didn't look angry. Dalyed. She didn't stop eating. Duddick. She didn't even look directly at me. Down. She reached across the dinner table for the salt, her sleeve brushing against the edge of her plate, and said calmly, almost thoughtfully, "You're not even half the woman your sister is." Knots paxed. She said it the way people say things they believe are facts. Not insults. Not attacks. Facts. Dawned. The words didn't echo. WT. They didn't demand attention. Daughters. They didn't arrive with drama. Daces. They landed quietly, precise and sharp, and settled somewhere deep in my chest. Not. For a second, I wondered if I'd misheard her. The sentence felt too clean, too casual to carry that kind of weight. I stared at my plate instead, at the roasted chicken cooling in front of me, at the thin crack in the ceramic that ran from the rim to the center. Noticed that crack years ago. No, I knew exactly where it began. Emmett. I knew exactly where it ended. P. In that moment, it felt familiar, taining. My fork froze halfway to my mouth. Noticed Stores. The room went silent, not the awkward kind, not the kind where someone rushes to laugh or change the subject. This was the heavy kind, Dodd. The kind that settles because everyone understands something important has just been spoken out loud. My father cleared his throat. He always did that when tension crept into the room, like his body was trying to reset the moment. But he didn't say anything. 9. He just stared down at his plate, shoulders slightly hunched. Across from me, my sister leaned back in her chair. Relaxed, comfortable, at ease. Naomi. Her posture was open, confident, the way it always was. Doc. Like someone who had never once questioned whether she belonged in the room. Dot. Her lips curved into that small, knowing smile. The one she wore whenever she knew the spotlight wasn't on her. Never would be. Bliss. I had heard versions of that sentence my entire life. Your sister is brilliant. Your sister is fearless. Your sister is changing the world. Docked. And then, when it came to me, she's reliable. Paces. She's quiet. She's fine. Not impressive. Not inspiring. Fine. Growing up. I learned early that responding only made things worse. Silence smoothed the edges. Silence kept family dinners intact. Glance it. Silence meant no raised voices, no tears, no slammed doors. D. So I practiced silence. Dot. At first, it was intentional. Later, it became instinct. Dog. I learned how to nod at the right moments, how to smile without showing too much, how to let conversations move past me like I wasn't standing right there. Conned. I thought silence made me generous. Kind. I didn't realize it was slowly making me invisible. Different. But something about that night felt different. Maybe. It was the gold-lettered banner stretched across the living room wall, the one my mother had hung that afternoon. Our pride. Maybe. It was the smell of roasted chicken mixed with candle wax and sugar from the cake waiting to be cut later. Placing. Or maybe it was simply that I was tired, not physically tired. W's, the other kind. Day, the kind that comes from holding something in for too long. I set my fork down. Daughters. The sound was soft, barely audible, but to me, it felt like thunder. Dot. Then I heard myself speak. Deferent. My voice surprised me. It was calm, steady, clear. Then I said, starting next month, she can pay the rent. Dale. The chair. Across from me screeched violently against the floor. My father shot halfway to his feet, his face draining of color. The rent? He asked. What rent? The word hung in the air, heavy and unfamiliar, like something that didn't belong in this house. 2. My mother frowned, genuinely confused. What are you talking about? My sister laughed, not warmly, Not cruelly, just a short, dismissive sound. "Is this a joke?" she said. "What rent?" I didn't answer right away. I looked at all three of them, really looked, 9. At my mother's confusion, real, unfiltered, Dackett. At my father's sudden fear, sharp and undeniable. Down at my sister's certainty, the kind that comes from never having to question her place. Doc. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. They didn't know, not one of them. My name is Claire Whitman. I'm the younger daughter, the quiet one. Day, the one who never caused trouble, 9 Way. My sister Emily has always been the pride of the family. Nonprofit work, advocacy, panels, articles with her name printed neatly at the top, photos with people who mattered. Nain, she had a career people liked to applaud. I worked in finance, numbers, spreadsheets, budgets, systems, data. The kind of work no one asked questions about because it didn't sound impressive enough to explain at dinner parties. Day. On paper, my life looked stable. I worked as a financial manager for a logistics company near the river. My days followed predictable rhythms, the hum of the office, the soft click of my keyboard, deadlines that made sense. Doc. I lived alone in a small apartment with warm lamps and a view of the water. I cooked pasta. I tied my hair up. I took comfort in small, orderly things. Day. But every Friday night, that steadiness ended. Every Friday. I drove to my parents' house in the suburbs, a 2-story home wrapped in manicured hedges and the illusion of a perfect family. The moment I stepped through the door, I felt 16 again, the second daughter, the supporting role. My sister filled rooms without trying. Conversations bent toward her. Compliments followed her like they were assigned. I learned how to exist in the margins. Dite. I thought being low maintenance made life easier. I didn't ask for much. I didn't complain. I didn't demand attention. I thought. Silence made me strong. I didn't realize it was teaching everyone else that I didn't need to be seen. 3 years earlier, everything changed. My father had a stroke. Truving. It wasn't dramatic. No collapse in public. No flashing ambulance lights. Just a quiet morning where his words came out slower than usual, where his right hand trembled as he tried to button his shirt. Nound. The doctors called it minor, 9. But minor things can still change everything. 9. His business slowed, then it stalled. Clients became hesitant, partners made excuses, and soon the phone calls began. Nowens. At first, my parents tried to hide it. Bills stacked neatly on the kitchen counter, always face down. Conversations behind closed doors. Voices dropping whenever I entered the room. Disids. But anxiety leaks through walls no matter how careful you are. One night, I walked into the living room and found my father sitting in the dark, the television off, his hands folded together in his lap. "I don't think I can keep up anymore," he said quietly. "Maybe we should sell the house." My mother cried in the kitchen when she heard Emily, said she wished she could help, but her work was unpredictable, her funding unstable, her schedule impossible. I didn't say anything. I went to my room, closed the door, opened my laptop. Doc. I sat on the edge of my bed with my laptop open, the glow of the screen lighting up the dark room. Mortgage, utilities, insurance, property taxes. I ran the numbers once, then again. I checked my savings account, then my checking, then my credit limit, just in case. I could make it work. Barely, but I could. Counting. I remember sitting there longer than I needed to, staring at the screen as if it might tell me whether this was the right thing to do. Double E's, whether this was love or fear or obligation disguised as responsibility. In the end, I didn't debate it. I told myself this was temporary. I told myself, families do things like this for each other. Pros. I told myself love didn't need witnesses. Dud. The next morning, before anyone else woke up, I called the bank. Doc. My voice sounded steady when I spoke to the representative. I gave them my information. I authorized the automatic payments. T'd. I transferred the first month's amount without hesitation. Dollars. When the confirmation email arrived, I felt something loosen in my chest. Paid. No alarms. No panic. No one crying in the kitchen. That night. My mother cooked dinner like nothing had happened. My father laughed at a joke on television. 9. My sister talked about her work, about a new initiative she was excited about. No one said thank you. Not. Because they were ungrateful. D. Because they didn't know. Now. I told myself that was fine. Nate. I told myself this wasn't about recognition. D. This was about stability. Dodd. This was about keeping things together until my father recovered. Destined, but stability has a way of becoming expectation. The payments went out every month. T. Quietly. Reliably. On time. Devil it. At first, I checked my bank account obsessively. I refreshed the app the morning the mortgage was due, watching the balance drop. Nay. I held my breath until the confirmation appeared. Paid. Daughterist. After a while, I stopped checking. Taunt. The anxiety faded into the background, replaced by routine. WC. The house stayed standing. Ground. The lights stayed on. Life. Continued exactly as it always had. Dow. And that was the strangest part. Nothing changed except me. Expect. I stopped thinking in terms of wants and started thinking only in terms of needs. I stopped planning trips, stopped buying new clothes, dinners, stopped saying yes to dinners and weekends away. Cleaters. At first, I had excuses. I'm busy. Work's been crazy. Maybe next time. Eventually, people stopped asking. Times. Friends drifted away slowly, not out of anger, but out of distance. My life had begun to revolve around obligations they couldn't see. At work, I stayed later, took on extra projects, said yes when others said no. Every 6. Not because I was ambitious, because I needed the bonuses, the overtime, the security. Every month, without fail, the payments went out. And slowly, without anyone noticing, my contribution disappeared into normalcy, never based. The first time I realized this, it caught me off guard. We were having dinner another Friday night, another familiar routine. My mother was talking to a relative on speakerphone. Things have been hard, she said, but Emily's work has really helped us through it. Emily smiled modestly from across the table. Tam. I poured water into my glass. No one looked at me. I told myself it didn't matter. Nevers. The second time, it hurt more. 10-ish. A cousin asked how my parents were managing after my father's health issues. Oh, we're doing fine now, my mother said quickly. Emily really stepped up. Teen. Emily waved her hand. I just do what I can. I cleared plates. Bidas. By the third time, something inside me went quiet, not numb, resigned. 9. I started to understand something I hadn't before. Silence doesn't just keep the peace. It teaches people how to see you. 9s. Or how not to. 9. About a year in, I overheard my parents talking late one night. Dodd. I was walking past the kitchen when I heard my mother's voice. I don't know what we'd do without Emily, she said. She's such a blessing. My father hummed in agreement. I stopped walking, not anger. Tease. Something colder settled in my chest. I waited for my name. It didn't come. 9. That was the first moment I understood that the story of our family was being rewritten quietly, carefully, without me in it. I didn't interrupt them. I didn't correct her. Tyne. I walked back to my apartment and sat alone in the dark, staring at the wall, disexpectant. I told myself it didn't matter what they said. I told myself I knew the truth, knowing. But knowing something privately doesn't protect you from being erased publicly. 2. The second year was harder. My savings thinned. Unexpected expenses hit harder. My job became more demanding, and my patience wore thinner. Tired. I started feeling tired all the time. Not the kind of tired sleep fixes, the kind that settles into your bones. Number. There were nights I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, calculating numbers in my head, replaying conversations, wondering when I would finally speak up. 9s. But every time I thought about it, the same question stopped me. Tang. What if they think I'm exaggerating? What if they feel guilty? What if I ruin things? Dod. So I stayed quiet. Neat. And the silence kept costing me. Date. On my mother's birthday that year, the house was decorated again. Balloons, cake, laughter, once more. The focus was on Emily. Need. She stood in the living room, accepting praise, brushing it off with practiced humility. D. She talked about how hard things had been, how much she wished she could do more. I watched her from near the wall. She wasn't lying. Teen. But she wasn't telling the whole truth either. Dockant. I caught my reflection in the darkened TV screen, standing off to the side, holding a drink, smiling politely. I looked like a guest in my own home. Never bent. After everyone left, I helped clean up. My mother hugged Emily tightly. Me. Then she turned to me and smiled. Thanks for helping, she said. You're always so reliable. Reliable, not generous. Not selfless, not strong. Reliable. Tant. I went home that night with a familiar ache in my chest and the uncomfortable realization that reliability, when unnoticed, turns into invisibility. By the 3rd year, the weight of it all had settled into something constant. The payments, the silence, the quiet erasure. I had stopped expecting recognition. Day. What I hadn't stopped expecting was fairness. Disses. And that's why, when my mother planned another family dinner, the one with the banner, the one where she would finally say the sentence out loud, I didn't see it coming. Die. I didn't know that night would be the one where everything cracked open. I only knew one thing. Day. If I didn't speak soon, I never would. Disses. The banner was already hanging when I arrived. Gold letters. White paper. Perfectly centered on the living room wall. Our pride. Dodd. I stood there for a moment longer than anyone noticed, my coat still on, my bag hanging from my shoulder, staring at those words. Doc. I didn't feel angry. Tired. I felt tired. T. The kind of tired that comes when you finally understand something clearly. Dinner. Began the way it always did. 9. My mother moved around the kitchen, efficient and practiced. My father poured wine, smiling too much. Dodd. Emily talked about a conference she was attending, a project she was excited about, a room full of people who would clap when she finished speaking. Everyone listened. Everyone nodded. 9. When the conversation slowed, my mother smiled proudly and said, You know, Emily has really been the anchor for this family these past few years. Emily laughed softly. Mom, please. My father added, We don't know what we'd do without her. That was when my mother turned to me. 9. She didn't mean to hurt me. That was the worst part. You're not even half the woman your sister is, she said. Not cruelly, not dramatically, just honestly. Ton. Something inside me went very still, too. For years I had told myself silence kept the peace. Day. In that moment, I finally understood the truth. Silence didn't protect me. It erased me. Tane. I pushed my chair back, tinned. The sound of wood scraping against the floor cut through the room. Detail. My heart was pounding, but my voice didn't shake. Then I said, Starting next month, she can pay the rent. Downing. Everything. After that happened quickly. Confusion. Denial. Nervous laughter. What rent? What are you talking about? This isn't funny. I stood up. The mortgage, I said calmly. The utilities, the insurance, the property taxes. My father shook his head. We pay those. No, I said, you don't. Taman, the room shifted. Not. Physically, emotionally, like the ground under us had cracked. 9. I walked into the living room and pulled the USB drive from my bag. Test. For a moment, my mother looked relieved, like she thought I was about to show photos or memories or something sentimental. I plugged it into the TV. The slideshow disappeared. The screen flickered. 9. Then a spreadsheet filled the wall. Rows and rows of numbers. Dates. Amounts. 36 months. 3 years. Klainsblace. At the top, in plain black letters, was my name. Claire Whitman. No one spoke. 2. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. No. My father stared at the screen, frozen. Emily stood very still. 9. For 3 years, I said quietly, I paid everything. The silence that followed was suffocating. Why? Why wouldn't you tell us? My mother whispered. I swallowed. Because I thought love was supposed to be quiet, I said. Because I didn't want to make anyone feel ashamed. Because every time I thought about bringing it up, it didn't seem important enough. Emily shook her head. I didn't know, she said quickly. I swear I didn't know. I believe you, I said. Down. And I meant it. Quote, this wasn't about blaming her, nowness. It was about being seen. I took out my phone. For 3 years, I said softly. I told myself this was temporary. I turned the screen toward them. Automatic payments. On. Nevered. Then I tapped once. Off. Click. Was quiet. Final. My mother stood abruptly. You can't just stop, she said, panic rising in her voice. We need... I know, I said gently. Dose. But I can't keep doing this in silence. Now, I didn't yell. I didn't cry. Tate. I grabbed my coat and walked to the door. My father reached out. Claire, wait. I didn't. Outside, the air was cold and clean. I stood on the porch for a moment, breathing deeply, realizing something I hadn't expected. I didn't feel guilty. Conity. I felt light. 9. In the weeks that followed, everything was awkward. 9s. There were phone calls, long pauses, apologies that came slowly and imperfectly. My parents had to make adjustments. Conversations happened that should have happened years earlier. Emily apologized. Not all at once. Not perfectly, but genuinely. Never. And for the first time, I wasn't managing everyone else's comfort. Time. I was managing my own. 9. I moved into a new apartment, bright, quiet, with windows that let in more light than I was used to. I bought furniture slowly. Tate. Only what I needed. Only what I loved. Down. For the first time in my life, I walked into a home that belonged entirely to me. 9. A month later, my parents came to visit. They stood in my living room, looking around like they were seeing me for the first time. My mother's eyes were swollen. We were wrong, she said. We let the story become something it wasn't. My father added quietly, we want your name on the house. I shook my head. I don't need it, I said. I have a home now. What I needed wasn't a deed. It was honesty. It was respect. Namen. When they left, the apartment felt even brighter. I stood by the window watching the city lights flicker on and realized something important. Choosing myself didn't break my family. It broke the story that kept me small, Dodd. And once you step out of a story like that, you don't go back. Down. Here's what I learned. Silence doesn't make you noble. It makes you invisible. People don't always ignore you because they don't care. Next isn't. Sometimes they ignore you because you taught them they could. Speaking up doesn't make you selfish. It makes you real. Nevers. If you've ever carried everything quietly, dot. If you've ever been compared, overlooked, erased, dot, comment. 0 if you stayed silent like I did, comment. 1 if you choose to speak up now. Dot. And if this story resonated with you, follow the channel. More stories are coming. Stories about finding your voice. Stories about standing your ground now. Stories about rewriting what family means.